Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Thom and Joe show. I'm Joe.
I'm Tom.
And this is...
It's another anniversary episode.
It's another anniversary episode. We will get back to the numbered ones soon enough.
Eventually.
But we realized way too late that the anniversary of the topic of today's episode was
imminent.
Way sooner than we thought it was. I thought it was August. I think you thought it was July, but then we looked and it was June.
It was June. And
so
then we panicked.
We are talking. we panicked because it was about 5 days from when we discovered it. So we had to
shit. We
not that it was a problem for me because the Police have been, one of my favorite bands since high school.
Yep.
But for you, even though you're British and they were technically one of the biggest bands in the world, they were one of the biggest bands in the world in 1983.
Yeah. Some years before I was born.
Yes.
Yeah.
As we've talked with Oasis.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're the biggest band in the world for a year, sometimes that doesn't leave a lasting impression on future generations.
Correct. Yeah, it's like So I think the Police do need a slight introduction for slightly younger listeners. Where do we start, Joe? Where do we start with the Police? I mean, people have obviously heard of Sting. Come on, I mean.
Yeah, Sting has been around, but he wasn't always the Light FM Sting and the guy who makes a Broadway show about British shipbuilders.
Nope.
And everybody reacted with, well, why didn't you make this in Britain? Nobody cares about this in America. And it flopped, so it did. So they were right, but...
Yeah. And then,
so you know that Sting. You know Brand New Day Sting.
Yeah.
As featured in that Family Guy joke. Oh, yeah, eat it, Sting. Well, what's that song of his I don't like? Desert Rose? Yeah, that's the one. That song sucks.
And Sting in the Jungle.
Although, as an aside, I do actually really like Brand New Day, even though it is a album built to win the Grammy for Best Album, and so it did.
Yeah.
It is like safe adult contemporary and blah, 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 but I still enjoy it. But we'll go back to the beginning in Great Britain when all of these people were
much younger,
young and in different bands, except for Andy Summer, who was 10 years older than the other two. But Sting was in one band, Stuart Copeland was in another, and they exchanged numbers, and then they started jamming out, and it's like, oh, hey, why don't we make a band?
Yeah.
And initially they got a guitarist from Corsica who they didn't think stood up well. They recorded exactly one song with him, and then they got another guy, Andy Summer, who was an industry veteran and 10 years older than them. And then they went out and recorded, what was it? Outlaws of Love is the translation.
Yeah.
I usually just say the English version of the first three Police albums because I don't know how to pronounce a lot of them. My wife has told me to speak French as little as possible because I took 4 years of Spanish and I can't even say bonjour correctly. She keeps correcting me and I think I'm saying it correctly, but she says, no, just stop. So,
and then they became
their first album
did okay. I think is the
it did okay, but it was just like Miles Copeland, who is Stuart Copeland's brother, obviously, and became their manager. He said this isn't working, but then he listened to this song and he's like, "Oh shit, you have something." And yeah, Roxanne, you do have something.
Yeah,
it's kind of the opinion of the first album that, Roxanne is the great song and everything else is kind of a proof of concept album for, they didn't really come until about White Reggae, which, says a lot about why the band doesn't get held up by younger generations because that they are originally a punk group,
Yep.
I should say, even though, like most punk people in Great Britain, they were called fakers because all they did was dye their hair blonde and,
Yep.
talk about politics. But they weren't really punk in the truest sense of the
Yeah,
fashion.
certainly not sonically punk.
But
They are sort of, I guess, the sort of certainly one of the first bands in the UK you can point to and go, that is new wave, my friend. That is not punk. That is not post punk. That is new wave over there. That is some
yes,
new wave.
very much new wave because they are too organized. They are too in sync with each other, and their mix of everything is really polished, really solid. They had something, and it felt like almost immediately that this works. And white reggae is where it comes together, which is, I think it's one of their 3 great albums. And I don't think many people will argue with me because the first one is a little rough because it's their first album. They're still sorting out. This one is where they come into their own. Oh, gosh. And then their third one was Rushed by the Studio.
Yep, because it's like, shit, we've got something.
And it has,
we've got something here. Better, quickly get more out of it. So.
Yeah. And they recorded it in 3 months, and it came out. And there are plenty of good songs. It's just, as an album, it is not as good as the rest of their discography.
Yeah, despite winning a Grammy.
The World is Running Down, which is a really good song, and some other stuff. And then we have my favorite one, which is Ghost in the Machine, which is where they start experimenting with the synths. This is where the new wave part of their... and they had a lot of overdubbings. They had a lot of extra layers, and it was a noisy because Ghost in the Machine was about living in the modern world, and all of the problems with that. And it was very sci-fi based, obviously from Ghost in the Machine, and
the cover is very futuristic. Which is that very
futuristic,
famous
It is a digital readout, but it's the band members. And I like that it came about because they didn't find any pictures they liked of the band to take in it, so they just got something else, and that something else was an iconic album cover. And it was my first introduction. The Police, they don't like it as much because there was so much work to do because of the... Sting said, well, my work was because I did the saxophone and I did the vocals, which wasn't that much. But when they did the 12th version of Guitar for Andy or something else, because it is such... I don't think they use the wall of sound, but it can be described as this huge wall of noise, especially too much information. Or Omega Man, where you're the last, where it feels like you're the, which is obviously based on the Charlton Heston movie where he's the last man on Earth, but it just feels like it because you are surrounded by the noise of the modern world and everything pushing upon, and it has a sonic feeling of it. But
it's also where that sort of slightly dub influence, sort of white reggae sort of style does sort of start to dissipate, and it's this more electronically driven sort of tightness. There's still the reggae sort of licks from obviously Summers, but it is increasingly this very electronically driven sort of sensibility to it.
And then we come at last to our subject matter, synchronicity, which it's amazingly that it comes out as it does, because the band was in complete flux, and soon after this, right when they were trying to make their next album, it just completely crashed and burned.
Including
one of the band members fell off a horse and broke their collarbone, and they're and that was probably more fortunate because we didn't have any ideas. We weren't really talking to each other. And we were kind of done as a band.
Yeah, it's
it didn't help that two of the band members were their marriage had just went to shit, and Sting, I imagine it was more so because he was having an affair with his next door neighbor.
Yeah, that won't help.
And that probably accelerated emotions and the process.
That will do
So,
it. Yeah. And the band were just actually, I mean, they had got to the point, I think, of basically physically nearly fighting in the studio at multiple points.
Yeah. Yeah, they were doing that at every breath you take.
Yeah.
And also, Sting was becoming bigger than life, and it's one of those things where, you know what happens when, like, the main guy becomes larger than life? He just goes off on his own, and he'd already recorded the solo album, the Blue Turtles solo album, which is, like most Sting solo albums, it's a lot of adult contemporary with one really, really great song, Fortress Around Your Heart, and which is good enough to make you try the next one and wonder why he doesn't just do that all the time. But
and then he occasionally does records which are just that all the time, and he ends up just winning everything in existence.
Yeah, Brand New Day is like an entirely mid album. I will admit it's an entirely mid album, but it like has so much work put into it that
it's precision built to win awards.
Has that
basically.
feeling?
Yeah, precision built to win awards.
Precision made to have like, and it's mostly good to listen to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. Call me a wuss. Call me not real. Call me whatever. I don't care. I'm 41. I'm done with this scene, and I'm done trying to be cool. I have never been cool a day in my life, and trying to be cool has only made my life worse. So, what the fuck ever. I listened to Sting make fun of me. Family Guy, come at me.
Anyway,
so back to Synchronicity.
Yes. So, I think we do need a little bit of the sort of background of why the Police had got to this extent of just being just at each other's throats, because it is very much the sort of thing where, like, obviously the three band members, all of the records they made previously have been done fairly quickly, and it's sort of like, this album is made ridiculously in 6 weeks. I mean, which this day and age, is just is nuts.
It really feels like everybody was just ready to do their own thing, and they were just kind of tired of each other, and
to an extent they had been doing their own thing. They sort of between obviously Ghost in the Machine and this, so obviously
they've been joining other people.
Sting had been
some of them were in like experimental electronic bands, and
Sting had been acting.
They were all Sting was definitely been acting, and right after recording Synchronicity, he did his infamous role in Dune, because the filming in that started in March. They recorded Synchronicity in the first 2 months of January, and then and like obviously you can see that as a man who thinks he's larger than life, and it really takes a man of that self-confidence and a person who can like pull that off in real life to do that role, especially with the costuming he was given, cod piece or whatever you want to call it, and nothing else.
Oh no, that is the move of a man who is supremely confident in what he's doing, even if he looks bloody ridiculous.
And certainly he is one of those insufferable people who, believes he's above everybody and can tell everybody else what to do, because he He was also in on that "Don't You Know It's Christmas," the one where
Oh,
Bono
Band-Aid, yeah, which is a little bit.
infamously shouts like, "Aren't you glad it's them and not you?"
Do they know it's Band-Aid? Yeah, which obviously
Do they know it?
Do they know it's Christmas Band-Aid? Yeah, which,
Yes.
again is and this is the sort of the thing. This, by the end of Synchronicity, by the end of the tour that they did to Synchronicity, they have sort of almost ceremoniously, sort of at the end of that tour, handed over almost the keys to being the biggest rock band in the world to U2.
Yes. It's like they literally had like the police up there, and they hand over every like
There we
the
go.
mic to U2, and it was like it was. Bono said it was a really touching moment, and like it was a really humbling moment because
yeah, it's like you're in charge now.
It was a literal passing of the torch, and Bono doesn't have too many humbling moments if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, but by this point, the conflict seems to be particularly between Copeland, between Sting and between Sting and Copeland. It is they particularly because Copeland by this point is doing soundtracks for Francis Ford Coppola, and is doing basically a lot of stuff, and in this year, I wonder whether if the police hadn't had this year of basically doing their own extracurricular stuff, whether they've kept going or whether the writing was always on the wall for the band. But
I think with how big of a personality Sting was, he was always going to go off on his own.
Yeah.
And he especially has that aura of a well-read, you might throw out the word pretentious around, because he is there is preachy, there is
completely. I mean, the title for this and Ghost in the Machine is taken from an American philosopher and journalist called Arthur Koestler, who obviously the term obviously comes from Koestler's book The Roots of Coincidence, which is this introduction
and
to
it's about
parascience,
parascience
and Jungian synchronicity.
Yeah.
And it's like, my Sting, you're a lad from the north of England. You're a lad who's basically
listen here, Gordon Sumner
here from and but the thing is he's very but he is a very wildly read guy. He was in, before he went into the police, he was in jazz bands. Obviously, he's obviously they are all. This is the thing with the police, which I think we need to emphasize. But even before they are in the band together, they are very accomplished and very, very talented musicians. And I don't think you would have had that. I mean, the period of productivity with all three of them that quickly. Basically, the band are been and gone in basically 5 years without that quality of musicianship.
And it's. I don't think why Andy Summer gets as much notice is because he was the industry veteran.
Yeah.
He's probably used to this bullshit, but he is also a technical master in what he does. Like how he records things. Like parts of it were recorded just to get the effect, just so he records his guitar just before just everything peaks.
Yeah.
And to get the exact sound he wants, and he knows exactly how to do that. He can do those advanced things, but while he probably joined in on the fights, he doesn't have the fights that Copeland and Sting, who are the creators of the band, they have a certain possessiveness of it, had. Or maybe I'm wrong, and it's just the stuff I didn't get because it's usually about Sting and Copeland.
I mean, I could certainly find nothing in the in any of the literature about this, about him being anything particular being in the thing. The only thing that Sumner's fighting is his guitar.
Yes.
In this case.
But that is not to mock anybody
No.
else, because Stuart Copeland is one of the great drummers of all
God, yeah.
time. Like, yeah, you could
Critically underrated. Critically underrated.
absolutely. He's not like
Yeah, he's just
like he is completely on point every time, and I can hear nothing wrong with I'm a failed percussionist. Like I could tell the first Oasis album definitely maybe had drumming problems. I could like the drumming was so 100% on that you don't know that I don't even notice the drumming sometimes, because it's so perfectly
metronomic
interlaced
almost,
into the songs.
Metronomic, except when it doesn't need to be metronomic, and it's sort of doing the doing the thing.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a thing where he plans his spontaneity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and by this point, they had been touring for 5 years off and on. They were, to repeat, the biggest band in the world.
And then they blew up.
Yeah, because cool. Where do we want to start with this?
Well,
the cover's very nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of pictures of them, and it's like the first three. It's the three band members, and it's different pictures of them, and they have the yellow, blue, red, and the album title "Synchronicity" is based on the Jungian philosophy of a connection through the connection of disparate elements.
Yeah.
And they will explain such in Synchronicity 1, which is kind of the album opener. Like, there's the phrase Todd, it was the first single, and it probably
only in Japan.
Well, no,
only
it wasn't
Japan.
the first single. Every Breath You Take is the first single, but
nice.
The second one was Synchronicity 1, which is kind of an introduction to the album and not a single in itself. But I don't know if Todd in the Shadows would consider it an "I'm Back, Bitches" single, which is just like we're the greatest and we're back and we're doing this. But because I don't know, because it is we're the Police, we're back, and we're also explaining what this album is.
Yeah, very much. It does. It does. So a little bit more about the album cover. There are apparently 36 versions of this album cover. Which I don't know if it's like that. I don't know if there's an album cover with more versions of the front jacket that exists. I mean, there's obviously like the there's multiple like albums with like the special editions of an album where you'll have like various band members on the front. I don't remember any band sort of putting out 36 different versions of the same album. And the vinyl is also special because it's apparently see-through. But anyway, yeah. So the first track of this, the first track of this, I absolutely adore, and it has this sort of so this is again one of Sting's sort of experiments with synthesizers. This features a synthesizer called the Oberheim DSX sequencer, which is that sort of which I think is that sort of jingling sort of noise at the sort of the beginning, which sort of carries on through this track. This is really weird.
Yeah.
Sort of opening to an album. This sounds like I mean this sounds like something like an experimental musician. I mean, this reminds me quite strongly of all things a piece by the experimental American composer Steve Reich, which is called called Mallet Fast, which has this very similar sort of tuneful sort of thing going on. It's perhaps the most bizarre comparison we'll ever make, but it is that sort of same sonic sort of like thing, and it's like the Police going, we're gonna really push the envelope of what we've done even further now.
And it fits that it's describing the concept of the album because everything it does is like disparate elements that are in complete harmony, like the synthesizer, their vocals, all the instruments on it, like the drumming and the guitar. Again, it's like Copeland's drumming is so on point. You can't tell there's like percussion in this besides the synthesizers.
Completely.
Which is it.
It's nuts. It's like, and nothing better matches that symbol of synchronicity than the band in sync. It's this sort of incredible moment of these three musicians are playing so tightly together with each other that you can't hear where it's this sort of polyphony where you can't hear where one instrument finishes, starts, and the other one and stops. It's glorious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this song better than Synchronicity 2, even though Synchronicity 2 is the one they bring up that is held up. Like, it's the one they put in Rock Band. It's the one that is, like, if you do a singles collection, I mean, not Every Breath You Take, but, like, some of these singles, they'll get Synchronicity 2 over Synchronicity 1, and it took me longer to get Synchronicity 2 than to get Synchronicity 1, but they're both terrific songs, and we'll get to the second one when we're doing the as we get to it.
Yeah. And so the only real edit that is of mention through the entire album is there was going to be something linking that thematically Synchronicity 1 to 2, because Synchronicity 2 does this very different sort of like, this very different sort of musical thing in, later on, or lyrical thing certainly, and there was going to be a bridge between the two of those themes. But anyway, Walking in Your Footsteps is a good song.
Yeah, it's a good song, but it's also taps into like the insufferability of
of Sting.
just like Sting. Like I know what it like, just like Bono, he's like kind of mellow Bono. I know why he is insufferable, because he is a preachy person who like thinks above it, and he is talking. I don't think he means to talk down to you, but he's talking down to you. And this is like, it's about how the dinosaurs died, and we're probably following in your footsteps with nuclear weapons and whatever, and our feelings that we don't think we're doing this. Our egos put us that we couldn't possibly be the dinosaurs.
Yeah. No, exactly.
We're not going to make that mistake, but we totally are.
Yeah, it's again, Sting has now, I think, has now occasionally got into a little bit of self-parody in terms of Sting the environmentalist going into like the middle of like the Amazonian jungle to jam with local tribesmen, and these local tribesmen are politely sort of looking at him like, who is this white man in the middle of our jungle? Why has he brought a Fender Precision bass with him? And oh god, it's Sting. Oh god. And I suppose in the 1980s there was like the threat of we could all be nuclearly annihilated by a guy who doesn't remember where he is, and a mad Russian. Oh, things haven't changed. Oh dear. Oh dear me. Anyway, good song. Good song.
Good song, and my only knock against it would be like the synthesized flute noises, and the native drumming is
it's a little bit
kind of dates it
on the nose, guys.
On the nose, and it dates it, and it's very that part of it is kind of 80s quiche, but the song otherwise is pretty good.
Not the best dinosaur related song of the 80s, sorry.
No. We have to walk that one.
We have to walk that one.
Walk the dinosaur, you would say.
Oh my god! Again, I think this is okay. It's a good. This is the thing. There's no really.
It's a fine song.
There's no really bad. There's nothing like. There are no stinkers on this record.
I would argue Miss Credenko, but we'll get to that. Okay. But yeah, it is much more jazz influenced and maybe Ghost in the Shell influenced. Yeah. I like don't really get any meaning of the song. This is just like this is a really smooth, extremely well polished song. Yeah,
it's good.
It's just emptiness, loneliness, and and God's away from it. And even though we live together, we don't really have an experience. Yeah. Our only experience is you took the biscuit.
Yeah.
And I wanted the biscuits. And that's the only thing that gets any emotional thing, and there's just this infinite space between people. Yeah. And this might have had to do with Sting's divorce. A lot of this has to do with the divorces of the band.
Yeah. Or the growing band-related divorce between, obviously Sting and Copeland. The other thing about this record is basically everybody was making the album in different rooms. They were even when they were recording tracks live together, they would be separated out across the
house in Montserrat. They had the air facility.
Yeah. Air Studios, which is where so many records were recorded.
And it kind of had to do with Hugh Padgham, the producer who worked with Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. And he wanted to record everything in a different room for sonic reasons. So they had people set up in the bathroom or set up in the kitchen, whatever else. And they have all this audio equipment where audio equipment isn't supposed to be, but they just they had the same producer from Ghost in the Machine, and they just kept the setup, and it worked for them. I mean, it makes a good story that, they were not getting along with each other, so they easily went with it. It made it a lot easier to go with this plan. So
and Sting goes, it sounds better for me to be able to hear my bass. If I am in a different room with a TV monitor going, basically with the control room going, I'm going to sit in the control room with my bass and play it as I would play normally. Whereas, Stuart is off down in the dining room, and, Andy's in the actual studio. We can hear each other play properly without, basically everyone deafening each other.
Yes. Okay. So we have Mother, which is probably the most interesting song out of this bunch. It is an extremely disturbed song.
Sting channels his inner Captain Beefheart, basically, is how I would basically describe this.
Or Norman Bates or something.
Or Norman Bates. It's this very disturbed vocal. Sting is basically. Sting's voice is like. I wouldn't describe Sting as I would never describe Sting as a limited vocalist, but throughout most of this album, he is basically doing the same sort of vocal, output. He is sort of singing most of these songs in the same way, and then you get Mother, and Sting is basically just having a freak out, while which is
a vocal freak out. He sounds like a Silent Hill character. And the voice actor wasn't given proper directions. He's just trying to do the best they can. And the Japanese people who don't understand English are just taking what they think sounds best. And which only adds to how disturbing it is. Because it doesn't sound like a normal human. It sounds like somebody who is just completely broken, every gerbil spinning on the wheel in his mind.
Yeah, it's like particularly alarming because then it basically like it goes from like normal police track, this normal police track, and it's like, what
Yeah.
the fuck was that?
And
It's a
I've
great
tried to ban
track.
myself from doing trying to imitate Sting because it never ends well with me, and it's like nobody can sing like Sting. And for the midnight when I went to the concert and they have a Q&A session, I tried to ask a question, but I didn't get a chance to. My question would have been, okay, for your song Heroes, you had to kind of sing like Sting for a little bit. How hard was that, and how did you do it?
Oh no, completely. And
But
he
in here,
has
it's
got
like,
a very difficult vocal, different,
yeah,
yeah, completely. And there's like there's a lot of high range in the voice. And I don't know whether the other two members of the band um, backing vocals on a lot of this. It always sounds like there is multiple voices in the mix. I don't know if that's,
yeah,
um, as I say, I
yeah.
don't know if that's
It's
Pagnum's
probably like
mixing
I
stuff.
do when what I'm singing doesn't working. I just choose to harmonize with everybody
Yeah,
else. So
yeah. I know certainly live they did obviously do that, where obviously they got all of them have got like mics and whatever. But yeah, Mother is a really good track. It is like there is, and I have to confess, so I have not previously listened too much of the Police. I have basically given myself a crash course on the Police over the last 3 or 4 days. There was a lot of anger in that early material, like a lot of
oh, absolutely.
this
Um, it,
punk stuff. It is proper. Yeah.
there was a lot of things that came out of like the Pink Floyd, like
Mm,
disenchantment with like 1970s Great Britain, and just
mm.
now that the world is connected, we see all we've done to the world,
Completely.
and
Yeah.
all of that. They were a more commercial version of that to a certain extent, and they certainly were
Yeah.
80s superstar version of that. Like We Are the World. Like obviously they work
Oh,
for Band Aid,
yeah.
so there is that they're trying to save the world kind of thing, even though they're certainly going to be the rock
Yeah.
personalities that, you know, they're going to be celebrities too. They're
Oh,
absolutely going to be
complete. Yeah,
celebrities, but
completely. Yeah.
they have this part of
I mean,
this.
this is
Um,
the point in music where music starts to get very slick. I think we've mentioned this before when we talked about oh god, we only mentioned in the past when we talked about another. You get to that early '80s thing, and it's like the music becomes very, it's not just a band releases an album, a band releases a couple of singles, an album does a tour, and then music becomes a product, and the Police are happen to be fairly photogenic, and
yeah,
they become, particularly in Sting's case, a part, this commercial product. These people who are quite photogenic and quite visually visually appealing. You compare how Sting looks to someone like Simon Le Bon of of God, Duran.
Duran Duran.
We are
Yes.
it's this sort of same period of music they are inhabiting.
But also they had like the maturity,
Mm.
like they look and act like adults, like they had adult problems.
Oh,
They
completely.
weren't getting super high on drugs and wrecking things. They were having divorces because of affairs,
Yeah.
and that their infamous stuff is because they were adults and egos, but it wasn't like
Yeah.
Simon Le Bon. Well, it wasn't like Oasis
No.
where they were drugged out and just destroying everything because they're young and
No.
rock and roll, man.
No.
And in Simon Le Bon's case, he looked like he was far younger than he was, and
Yeah.
he got the teenagers
Mm.
like worked up far more
Mm-hmm.
because he was just the hunk and he was the
Mm-hmm.
hot guy that is around my age.
Oh, completely. The thing is, by the time that that they were making Synchronicity, Sting and Copeland were entering their 30s, and things start, but the old thing where bands get to 30 and they start worrying about, they stop going, oh, sex and drugs and rock and roll, and start going, shit, we've got to have we've got to start doing songs about adult problems now.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they've always kind of had that. They've always kind of had a maturity.
Completely. I mean,
even white reggae, which is a lot of songs, bring on the night, we're gonna party, and all that stuff.
Completely. There is always this sense of with the Police, there is always this, and obviously it's something that Sting has carried on into his obviously his solo career, and to an extent Copeland has carried on a little bit, and certainly it has become Sting is now as much alongside Bono probably the best example of a political activist who also plays music. Yeah.
I do. For Mother, I do want to note one thing, that the writer is Andy Summers.
Yes.
And it's interesting.
The oldest member of the band.
This is the one he came up with.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because like everybody else is having their problems, and then there comes this song about this really unnerved guy who worries that his mother is consuming him. I don't know. I mean, putting a lot of assumptions into music, can be fair. It can be horribly. I don't know if this had to do with anything with Andy, but
or if it's just a character piece.
I hope not.
Yeah,
because he's the elder one.
Yeah. It
is
certainly the most unpolice-like song of the entire, I would say almost the Police's sort of second half of their career. It seems to sort of completely go against everything else they've been doing really realistic since Ghost in the Machine. It's just like this is very strange.
Yeah, and the only way to listen to it, because it's just a lot of what I call drunken horns, and just like the guitar just wonking out. I mean, in a very controlled way, but so it's a very a very drunken song, sonically. So yeah, it's the best thing I can do is just listen to it, and it's just like you'll immediately get why this is just so weird. And
completely.
Like some people who only listen to the Police casually, I've talked to over the years, and then you bring up the song Mother, and it's like, oh, I remember that one. Or just people who casually listen to music, they've heard it only once, but they absolutely remember it, because like, wow, that sounds familiar. I have heard that.
That was the Police.
and yeah, certainly a song that makes the at my old city I lived in, makes their Weird Wednesdays radio station, where they will play the bizarre songs that were singles by big bands. This qualifies. This, I don't think it was a single, but it absolutely qualifies as a famous song from a famous band that is completely unlike everything else they've done.
Yeah, completely. So
now, before we circle around the same points for Mother, Miss Gradenko.
This is the one song written by Stuart Copeland for this album.
Yeah,
I've kind of forgotten this one already.
Yeah. A lot of the songs written by the other band members, not Sting, never feel like they are the songs written by the other band members. This is the one song I have found that, yeah, this is definitely written by somebody else. Because I kind of get what the point it's trying to make. It's Miss Gradenko is a person having an affair with a dictator, and the voices are like the people around the dictator who don't really like her and are trying to figure out a way to get rid of her, I guess. But the song feels like a goof. It doesn't. I don't know what it's saying here. I don't know what it wants to say. I don't. It's
Yeah.
it just feels like a lark about, but it's trying to make a statement. So why
Yeah.
are you making a goofy 2-minute lark about and trying to make a statement at the same time? None of this makes sense to me, and it's just.
Yeah.
It's only 2 minutes, so it's an easy song to skip, and that's what I usually do with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those songs
There's
that
nothing
gets
wrong
to
with
sort
it
of the.
musically.
Yeah, it's one of those songs that's short enough. You go, can I actually be bothered to skip this?
Yeah, and there's no resonance on it. Like the thing I can say with a lot of Police songs is that there is this resonance on it, that you feel what they're talking about, and
Completely.
it a lot of it sticks with you. And Miss Gradenko doesn't stick in any
No.
way. It because it's the music is just kind of goofy. It's it's trying to say something. It doesn't, but it doesn't really say anything, and it's just I don't know. I don't know. I skip it and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
It's inoffensive, but
It's
it just doesn't do anything.
yeah. Which compared to the rest of the record, it's like but simply blandly inoffensive is like below the level of the rest of the record to such a degree we're talking about it. Cool.
Okay.
It's Thom
To
Synchronicity Part
Synchronicity
2.
2, which changes from, the general scope of synchronicity to just a man having a really fucking bad life. And this isn't the first time they've done a person with a bad life. I remember on White Reggae, there was the song about the guy, the suburban white guy who was having a bad day, and it's just kind of coming back on how much he's been a shitty person over the decades and just going about life. But this is a different sort of like having shit, because like this is like how all of the negative little pieces of the world are starting to build into this gigantic monster in
Scotland.
underneath. Because it obviously makes reference to the Loch Ness monster. Which, how dare you? Nessie is a treasure and is wonderful. How dare you call her a monster?
Yeah.
But
It's certainly like it is the police being the typical police. It's like, do you get this as a metaphor? Do you get this as like we're bouncing this man having a very very terrible anxious day with the arrival of a sea monster out of the loch and terrorizing a local town. It's like, yeah, which
yeah,
might take inspiration from W.B. Yeats's The Second Coming, a piece of a poem that ends with the arrival of the Antichrist and the apocalypse rolling into Bethlehem. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Sting is extremely well read.
So, yeah.
But yeah, it's a really great song, and if one is the positive, this is definitely the negative of just the world we've created that is just so high on anxiety, so high on criticizing, so high on everything that it beats us down and kind of wrecks us until it's the end of Paranoia Agent, where the negative shit we've done turns into this black blob and destroys Tokyo or something like that.
Completely. The music video for this nearly ended with Stuart Copeland on fire. So they did a music video for this, which is directed by Godley and Cream, who are an English rock duo who originally were part of the English rock band 10cc and ended up doing music videos alongside something called Consequences, which is a bizarre piece of mid 70s prog. And they basically shot each band member on like a tower of junk, and of course, Stuart Copeland's one caught fire with Stuart Copeland on top of it. Yeah. And they tried to keep filming.
Probably while they were filming it, they were just whispering, "Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry." 10cc joke, sorry. Very
very niche 10cc
obscure single from British rock history.
Unless you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, there's that. But I don't think they played that part with the
no, they don't. It's
the message of the thing recorded by the secretary that repeats "Big boys don't cry," which is the woman. It's supposed to be like the female in the person's life, but it was actually the secretary. But I'm going too far on the aside. Must switch myself back.
And I prefer Synchronicity 1 over Synchronicity 2. So yeah, there was going to be between Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2 a section which summoners called the Lock, which is going to be basically like this little interlude between the two, obviously of setting up the idea of the monster for the second track for Synchronicity 2. This got cut. I assume, because Miles didn't like it. Too psychedelic.
Yeah, Miles Copeland, the manager, and Stuart's brother. But yeah, he said it was too psychedelic, which they I mean, you can say a lot about them. Like, they were always an orderly band, for better or worse, for their reputation. Like, I'm fine that they're orderly and, you know, all of that stuff. But, you know, it hit their reputation, especially that they became huge. And then, you know, once Sting had his solo career that was based on his jazz experience, it was just like, oh, you total sellout.
Oh,
you complete total sellout.
I mean, the Copeland, the Stuart, obviously just going on to, you know, Miles Copeland obviously went on to run IRS Records, the record label that the REM started on. That's fine. And
then Stuart Copeland went on to make the Spyro the Dragon series music. Yeah. So, hi to my son Ren. Hello.
Hello, Ren.
One of the guys in this band makes the music for Spyro the Dragon. So enjoy.
Including the most recent record, which is, I think, a Spyro the Dragon related thing. Yeah. Also, their father, Stuart and Miles' father, was a member of the CIA.
Okay then.
Yeah, as one does. I mean, you can't, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, so, Stuart Copeland's done, you know, whole interviews talking about. He's certainly, I think, alongside, just to go on a brief interlude, certainly alongside, you know, Reznor, probably the most famous musician who's gone on to doing, you know, full-time video same soundtracks. But that's an interlude for another period, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So now we are to Every Breath You Take.
Oh boy.
The one song people take from this album, because it was huge. It was ungodly, unbelievably huge.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm looking at just the spots. I've just got, obviously, I've been listening to the album on Spotify, and the plays for this are nuts. So it goes like, Every Breath You Take has got 1.5 billion plays. The next most plays on the record is actually this is the weird thing with Synchronicity, with the exception of Synchronicity 2, which is sort of, you know, obviously Synchronicity 1 is only a single in Japan. This is backloaded. This is like, you know, obviously with the majority of, like, you know, with records, you'll put all the singles at the front, because you can just go, oh, well, we can just buy the record and put the record on the turntable, and there, you know, within like 5 or 6 tracks, you've got all of your singles. Not the case with this one. All of the singles, are, apart from Synchronicity number 2, are at the other end of the album. They're actually at the they're actually all on side 2.
Yeah, Ghost of the Machine especially is front loaded, because the biggest singles from that are tracks 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
It's my favorite one because like the great music really begins after the singles, which is not just take anything away from the singles. I just heard them too damn much, and then you get to the songs that actually fit the theme.
Yeah.
And it is a really cohesive, solid album after the singles, and it's amazing to just listen to all the way through. Whereas the first three songs are great by themselves, but they live in their own world because they're so great by themselves.
Completely. So Every Breath You Take is by far, I think, it is the most famous Police song, I think.
Yeah. And the music video that I watched in preparation, it has 1.1 billion views. Like,
yeah.
It was literally considered the song that has the most radio play time of any song in history.
Completely, yeah. Oh, completely. This is This is Titanic. You know, this song arrives, and this song, you know, this is this is, you know, I mean, obviously, let's say this song won for a start, won 2 Grammys, won 2 Grammys. This was going up against, and I have to sort of emphasize, this is the sort of scale it's going up against. This went up against Thriller, and won 2 of the awards that Thriller was going to win. Yeah, this beat it as Song of the Year. That's the scale we're looking at. And that might have to do with
the makeup of the Grammys people, but
they might be white.
We'll save that for another day. The Grammys are the Grammys, and everybody has complaints just like the Oscars. But
completely,
yeah. And it was like Titanic. It had its length of backlash because every breath you take, I think, got misunderstood.
Oh, completely.
It got called the stalker song at one point. My wife doesn't like it, and I completely understand why.
Completely.
Because Sting from the outset knew this was a little bit of psychotic song. I mean, he knew it was a stalker song. He knew it wasn't good what this song was about. But because of the point of view and how the music felt, it doesn't come across. And Sting literally has to look pissed off in the middle of the video.
Yeah.
And it is an obvious choice. And people ask him, why do you look so upset? Is it part of the band dysfunction why you blow up? And it's no, because this song is about a not good person. It's about a person who is obsessive with this woman. And, obviously it was made during a bad time when he was getting divorced from his wife, and he still had that. There's still that possessiveness.
Completely, yeah. This is obviously being.
It was written at a bad time, and we've all had bad times in relationships, but we don't make one of the biggest singles of all time
There's a couple
about it, and then give smooth, extremely
MORAL
well-connected music.
Yeah. Oh, completely.
I mean, there's not like that completely drunken music from Mother to let you know this is bad. This is a completely
cloyingly sinister,
pop song.
Yeah, completely
cloyingly sinister.
Cloyingly sinister, but it's
just only if you only watch Sting in the music video and how the lighting will change to okay, this is not good. You and if you just hear it on the radio, you wouldn't know unless you just do analysis on the lyrics and this is not good.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things, a few bits of trivia I do need to go through. So fun fact, obviously Sting retreated to the Caribbean to obviously post the acrimonious divorce affair, etc. Rocked up at a estate in Jamaica and started writing the song on a certain writer's desk. So
yes, Ian Fleming. He literally went to Goldeneye, his house in the Caribbean, and wrote it.
Yeah. Sting has been told multiple times by couples, obviously, who said they got married to this, which is and Sting is inwardly going, "Oh God." So yeah, the song is about surveillance. very much sort of, it is the start. It is again, this 80s fear of, of increased surveillance, obviously in Sting's native England, of increased, CCTV, etc. And and obviously the tensions in the band, that the idea that, hey, we're watching Stuart drum this through a television screen, and Stuart then actually coming to genuinely nearly having a fight with Sting in the in the room. It's like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
And the music video, obviously, on early MTV, which obviously again became, a very, obviously again very, peak. This is obviously peak MTV, obviously.
And it's kind of a peak British music video in that like it's trying to say something around what's the band is already doing, but I don't quite know what it's doing. It just puts things in like when the synths start, it starts an orchestra, and that's not an orchestra guy or a string section at least, but that's not strings. That's a synthesizer. I know it's a synthesizer, guys. And Sting is playing a bass, like the instrument bass that gets mistaken for cello. Upright bass, and he is playing bass guitar. And then there's like people painting, and there's house coming up, and everything's lighting up or not lighting up around it. And I don't know what it's saying. It's just putting stuff in and thinking it does. If you've ever watched Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, there's that music video they do in the middle of it that is just stuff people put in British music videos, like just the random shirtless guy like showing off his abs in the middle of a bar for no reason. And it kind of has that feel of they're putting stuff in that there's some intention in it, but God help me if I can figure it out.
Oh yeah, completely. The band, this charted, obviously it's just ridiculous. This is like ridiculous sort of like stuff going on with this. Charted at number 1 in God knows how many countries, or was in the top charts. This apparently, I don't know where they're getting these statistics from. This is apparently basically a quarter to a third of Sting's all-time royalties are from this song. And Sting makes 2,000 apparently as of 2003, which obviously probably we got inflation on top of this. Sting was making $2,000 a day from this song alone. Probably far more these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is I feel this is like one of these tracks that's bigger than the record it's on, which, considering the scale of this record to start with, is yeah. And then obviously Puff Daddy went and remixed it and won another Grammy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Puff Daddy.
Oh, Puff Daddy.
Like, I like him better than most people do, but it was still blatantly obvious what he was doing. And then when you get to his original stuff, you understand why he samples other people's.
Yeah.
Because he cannot come up with them. Even as known as a producer, he doesn't come up with good shit.
No.
It's just like I find this good sample and I use it, well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a very, very good, at building these tracks. His rapping is not so good.
His rapping and his coming up with his own beats that are not samples is not great either.
No. It's maudlin as hell, and it is. I feel if it had been released as anything other than a tribute to the Notorious B.I.G., I think it would have disappeared fairly quickly. Oh, and Sting sued him because he didn't actually get legal approval for the sample. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
But obviously Sting,
Yeah, but
Sting, I think, had made up with him by the time it came round to the Grammys, because Sting actually turned up and did it with him with the MTV Video Awards. You know, when the MTV was relevant. Yeah. So huge song.
Yeah, and it deserves it. I think it's not one of my favorites just because it's like in media we have unintended messages.
Yeah.
What messages do you send along?
Hmm.
Because obviously Sting intended this to be creepy, and he realized, even though he was in the midst of a divorce and kind of your emotions kind of take over, that this is not a person you want to be.
No.
But musically, it doesn't have like the mother dissonance, and so it sounds smooth. It sounds like it's a genuine expression of love, and a lot of people took it as such. And then they realized later, hey, wait a minute,
Yeah.
and like this is actually creepy, Sting. And Sting's like, yeah, it was supposed to be creepy. You didn't pick up on that? You didn't watch the music video when it like went from like really bright white to harsh black, and my face was like really creepy. That this was not good. But
No. Yeah.
but you know, if you just listen to it on the radio, it sounds like it is a, you know, like genuine expression of love, and it's supposed to be meaningful in some ways, like holding the boombox over your head and say anything. It's supposed to be like one of those. That's what it feels like. But you know, if you take it with you have to know context, and you have to, you know, listen a bit to get to.
Oh, completely.
Yes, he actually believes it's bad, but you don't feel that when you listen to it, and that is the problem with the song. And I know a lot of people will just yell at it's not supposed to be like that, and if you don't get it, you're stupid. But you're not stupid. It's just that's the way the song comes off by how it's made.
It's evasive. It's deliberately evasive, and you know, it is deliberately, you know, it is deliberately, you know, it is deliberately aimed at being, you know, oh, you know, this is really creepy, wraps up as being, you know, oh, you know, really sincere. Stuart Copeland also hates this song.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
It's like, no, I fought Sting in the control room. We're not having this. No, he absolutely hates it. He says the arrangement is terrible. There's no groove on it, and the only person who did anything worthwhile on it is Andy. Sounds about right for Stuart Copeland.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he doesn't come up as an ego.
No.
They probably just Sting was obviously going into a more commercial direction, and Stewart wanted to more do his own thing or just hang out with experimental artists he liked.
Yeah.
And that was, but yeah, certainly this would be one Stuart Copeland really didn't like, and I know why.
Yeah, completely.
It is a adult contemporary pop song at its heart.
Completely. It is the sort, you know, it is almost that sort of bridging point between, you know, the Police and, you know, Sting's later solo career. You know, it cannot help but be, you know, that. Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, this song is actually a trilogy of songs of Sting dealing with his divorce.
Yep.
And
more divorce coming up now.
All three of them are very well-known Police songs. So next we come to King of Pain.
Yep, another single.
Which is, you know, another single, and this is kind of like, this is how he feels when he, you know, is just living day to day, and, you know, it hurts that the love ended and everything broke up and everything is painful. And he was actually with his current partner, and you know, there looks like who said there's a little spot on the sun, and it's just like, oh, that's where I keep my emotions, or he said something really cheesy, really corny about that. That's where I am living right now. He said little black spot while everything is burning around him. And then that became the basis for the song. And even he even Sting's kind of embarrassed with how he came up with it, but it's a good song. It's just, it's kind of lower. It's kind of, it's a very slow song. It's a very, it's obviously not a upwards feeling song.
No.
It's
downbeat.
It wants to wallow, and it's downbeat, and it's very much about living in your angst and your sorrow. So I don't have much to say, even if it's a big single. Like it gets its point across, but a lot of the times I don't really want to listen to it. I mean, it's a very good song. I'm not going to take anything away from it. It's just like
But it's
when you're asked what police songs you're in the mood to listen to, King of Pain doesn't really top it.
Yeah, it is Sting going into that sort of, that more. I mean, basically, the back half of the album is almost entirely Sting writing it, and it is almost the start of him, starting to develop the sound he will, albeit with the help of the rest of the Police, the sound he would do on like later records, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Very understated melody, and that very, these are melodically driven, pieces tracks, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know. Just then we move on to "Wrapped Around Your Finger."
One very quick thing about King of Pain. There is a very, very good cover by Alanis Morissette when she did her MTV Unplugged, which is one of those.
I'll have to listen to that.
Which is one of those songs. Which is obviously with MTV Unplugged you always do a cover of somebody else, and this is regarded as a highlight of that particular MTV Unplugged.
Okay, that's good to know, because I just recently listened to and absorbed Jagged Little Pill in my as a non-teenager, just listening to music, and it's actually really solid. I actually really like it. Considering all of the songs that she makes that turn out to singles and what happened to her next album, which just exposed how
completely
tedious her writing style was. I'm probably being too mean, but she has a certain style she falls back on where she says one phrase and then she puts thoughts into it, and that's a lot of the songs, and that's most of the songs on her second album.
Completely, yeah.
Second big album.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how long it is, like, it really, like, strung out all of the weaknesses of Alanis Morissette's writing style and choices, and just made them blatantly obvious to everybody, which was why that album gets shit on so. But that happens, once you get familiar with, a certain songwriter anyway. So it just happened to all happen, begin and end at this one album where just it all pokes out. But I do think Alanis Morissette is really good. I like Jagged Little Pill, and I don't dislike Alanis Morissette at all. It's just getting into the under the hood of why this doesn't work, and I'm a music critic, so anything like that is going to come out as harsh, especially on an album that was considered one of the worst albums of the decade, which I don't consider, but I get why it's bad.
Oh, completely. And the fact is that obviously on top of that, Jagged Little Pill dominates the landscape of 1990s female alternative rock. Yeah. It can't help but do so. Yeah.
Okay, so "Wrapped Around Your Finger," which I have the weirdest trivia about this song. There was an 80s TV series called Kid Video, which is about this band who goes into this cartoon world where they have to face this villain called Master Blaster, and it's meant to be like, we're the real band and we're fighting like the commercial people, even though what they totally make is acceptable commercial kids pop.
Yeah.
But they use licensed songs through a lot of the thing, and one of them is "Wrapped Around Your Finger."
Yeah.
And just one of these things where one of the characters is having a hallucination.
Oh, completely. You
Now
obviously
I'm starting
have
to think, is it King of Pain or Wrapped Around?
yeah, you obviously have the
Yeah.
Family Guy episode where they do the obviously the various and the music video for this is particularly famous with the
Hmm.
candles.
Yeah. I like the song.
Yeah,
It's
it's a good song.
it's just that like lingering. It's the last lingering feelings of when something is a relationship is over, and you need to, and you're getting over it, but there's a part of you that's never going to be over it, and
Mm.
it there's first that you'll be wrapped around my finger, and it's like I'll be wrapped around your finger, and it's the point. It's not like somebody's being an ego or you're going to remember me, blah blah blah. It's like we all take, even if these end horribly, even if we completely separate, we take a piece of ourselves. A piece of ourselves is taken away
Completely, yeah.
by the person, and we take a piece of them, and that will always be a part of us in these relationships,
Yeah.
even if they end. And
Completely.
that's kind of the point of the song. And I like that. And it's, I like it a lot better than King of Pain when listening to it, because it just has this sense of moving on instead of wallowing in angst.
Oh, completely. This is the end of that. There is a sense of that's that obviously he understands he's done something wrong, but you got to move on. You can't keep explore. You can't keep rotating through this sort of sense of guilt all the time. Almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about them, but they are all really good songs, and um, they make their point extremely well, and there's a reason they were singles.
Yeah, completely. That sort of and then we move on to wrapped around your finger, which the that trilogy is a trilogy of tracks. It is superb. It's really well put together. It's it's very it tells a story, and by the end of it, um
Mm-hmm.
they do Sting has come out the other end, come out, and obviously you get all this Greek mythology imagery, which obviously Sting has come out of the labyrinth, come out of come out of his sort of Odysseus-esque trek through his own psychology, and come out the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not completely unchanged, but you never do come
Yeah.
out unchanged.
No.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and Sting, for all of his larger than life and ego, and like feeling like he's talking down to you about real issues, and of course he's very much comes off as a snob because he reads all of this stuff, and his taste falls towards things that the general population tends to like completely reject. But he comes off as a reasonable person when you like talk to him.
Completely, yeah. He comes
At the
across
very least,
as a for all of the stuff that he does, with his big his big charity things and all the thing, he is after all a guy from the north of England. He's
mm-hmm.
the same as anybody else. Absolutely.
Yeah. I do wonder if he was bullied, because it seems like with his stuff he was on a different mind than everybody else, because of we'll talk more about this in the Sahara.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has very different tastes than a lot of people, and what he reads and what he gets into. Like,
Yeah, he always seems very compared to like a lot of okay, Simon Le Bon etc. was doing other stuff, but he's always felt very comparatively bookish. Not many
mm-hmm,
people are making allusions to in 1980s rock to this and that and the other.
mm-hmm. I mean, certainly people aren't reading Coaster's stuff and
No,
then making pop songs
no.
out of them. Everybody kind of like
Mm,
else kind of makes references to stuff that they read in high school
mm,
because there's that common ground and it's easy to get.
completely, yeah.
But Sting's out here like reading pseudoscience books and like naming albums after him,
Mm,
or Jungian philosophy, which is not like completely unknown, but because I did get taught Jungian philosophy in high
mm,
school, but it's not something like it's kind of something you have to go looking for
mm,
because it's not required to get through
yeah.
high school or something like that. But like psychology was optional, and I just took it because
Mm,
you know I had an interest in it.
and why not?
Why not? Because I need to figure out what the hell's going on with myself, and nobody else seems to know. Because this is the 80s and 90s, and they have like tough love seminars, and they're just coming up with things that are wrong with me. So
Mm,
let's look and see if there's any answers here. And there was, and
yeah.
yeah. And part of my problem is there was nobody else to tell me, oh, yeah, you have this, until I
Mm,
was like 27.
yeah. Ah. Yeah.
So, Tea in the Sahara, which uh, might be the stuffiest song in, it might be the, I don't want to say impenetrable. There's not,
No.
but this is based on a story within a story. And so Sting had read The Sheltering Sky,
Yeah.
which is a novel about Australians who consider themselves travelers in life. And it was made into a Bernardo Bertolucci movie that is really long. It is
Yep.
is it came after he did Last Emperor, and Bernardo Bertolucci makes very long, very artsy movies that like you have to really pay attention to know what it's about because sometimes
Mm,
it doesn't tell you, and the movies can get very glacially paced if you're not into it and you're not absorbing it. And Sheltering Sky is the most glacially paced of really long, really artsy
mm,
movies.
yeah.
And if you don't get into it, you really don't get
No.
into it. And within The Sheltering Sky, there is this Arabian fairy tale about princesses who invite a prince out into the Sahara for tea time,
Mm,
and they keep waiting for him, and they keep waiting for him, and he never comes. And that's it kind of wraps the album to a certain extent. This originally wraps the album, but future versions put on Murder by Numbers.
yeah.
And
And the tape versions as
it's
well.
just like, yeah, the tape version. But this feels like it does feel like the ending of
Mm,
the band. It feels like the ending of Sting's relationship. It feels like the ending of everything. You are going to be waiting for this thing to happen
mm,
that you really want to happen, but it's never going to come. It's it's all over, and it's again. I think this is the music meshing with what Sting's trying to do because, like, I didn't get until I like dug down and did the research. Like, the music fights with what Sting is trying to do and he's trying to be the prince who is never coming back. But the music is just this
mm,
subtle little airy little thing, and it's just like it feels like what it's about is two people who are alone being together. That's what the music feels like. But the lyrics are about how everything's over, nothing's happening. Even if you want it to happen, you can just wait there. It's never gonna.
mm.
So, like, it's another one where I like it, but it fights with itself to a certain
Oh,
extent.
completely. And it is, you know, again to sort of indicate, the sense of how the sheltering sky. It's, the sheltering sky is something, within a year or so would also be name checked by King Crimson in their more, experimental, well, one of their more experimental and progressive phases.
And to our other stuff we get into, the sheltering sky is what is called the thing that surrounds the Earth in the anime Gilgamesh, which is
something we'll eventually cover.
We will do it someday. We have to do it someday, but it is. I don't know if I love that show or I hate that show because it is the most pretentious thing.
Yeah. Written by the guy who did
was made for
$5,
and it has.
Written by the guy who did Kamen Rider.
It is extremely pretentious, but it's also extremely ugly, and it is not. It is the least crowd pleasing thing in the world. It actually has certain disdain for the crowd at some points. So it is not a likable show, but it does exactly what it's supposed to do, budget aside.
Yeah.
So like that is kind of the world we get into when you bring up the sheltering sky.
Completely, yeah. It's it is. It's not a happy. It's not by no means is it a happy piece of music. It is the end of the Police. The band would carry on for another couple of years. They wouldn't really make any serious attempts to record and would eventually break up in 1986. About 2.5, nearly 3 years later, and wouldn't reform until 2007. That's it. That's the end of. Apart from the bonus track on the tape version. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and speaking of the bonus track, this is the one where I have to resort to my band of singing like Sting, because all I want to do is sing the chorus of this song in like that high voice. I don't know. The chorus gets in my head. And it really shouldn't, because I can't do this voice. Nobody wants it. Please don't, Joe. Please stop.
Stop, Joe.
And
stop. It's too late.
I've taken my meds today, so I have self-control. We're good.
It's fine. We're not gonna get. It's not gonna get Sting. It's all right.
Yeah, this is the most like Sting's solo career song on this album. It is Sting with his jazz influences. I mean, it's I hesitate to say funky, but it's catchier than a lot of Sting songs where he's just doing like light adult contemporary jazz. But it sticks in your head. I mean, there's an obvious metaphor here, but like it doesn't come off like the lyrics don't come off like they should in the song. It's just which leaves it kind of a nothing catchy song. Like, but it's the song is called "Murder by Numbers," and it's like, just destroying something and making it into art or something like that. But it's like too smooth and it's too, catchy and pop, influence to really make a mark of what the song is trying to be about. It's just a catchy song.
Definitely. It's a really good,
All right.
and again, if the album, you do end the album with the tape, with this, on the tape, it's again a fitting end to the band, I think.
Yeah, it's a tribute to like how good the band is, and maybe like some of their slight weaknesses, like their catchy songs their later songs are so smooth that you don't get the anger in it.
Yeah.
Or you don't get the underlying levels of it, because it's just like Sting's essentially saying he destroyed stuff to make his art, or he turned what he destroyed into his art, and it was extremely easy to do. And like it was, there should be like something more sinister, but there's no sinister feeling in a song called "Murder by Numbers."
No.
And no, and that's, as we've said, that's a kind of repeated notion in their later albums.
Yeah.
That, you know, their anger stuff kind of gets covered by how, like, really great the band is. It's like these guys are too good for what they're saying. Like they are too in step. They are too they're too processed and formal, which, you know, that might bring back to their initial punk. But
Completely, yeah.
You know, what makes them great is what kind of limits them from making statements, I guess. I don't. But
yeah.
But like, nevertheless, I understand what they're saying, and I've always loved them as a band. So
Yeah.
it's
And I certainly will listen to them more. I mean, this is the thing. I feel like they are, you know, perhaps, I feel they're always going to have a certainly a following. I do wonder whether, this generation will, particularly get into them as much as, obviously private generations. But all it takes is one TikTok trend. So
yeah, and well, Sting's solo career, like rap artists, like he is like the least rap person ever, and rap artists have been using his King of Hearts song as a sample for years.
Oh, completely. And it's like, he did a whole album with Shaggy, and it's like, Sting, what are you doing?
Yeah, one thing I should have brought back in the front, and it's just like, I understand, modern criticisms, like these people are stealing music from black people. Like, they obviously took reggae influences and the political messages from black artists. They took that and they acknowledge it to a certain extent, but still three white guys who
essentially playing reggae, but then
reggae,
and okay, you got like
Madness, what I want to say to this is
played sort of.
What I want to say to this is, but nobody sounds like they do. Nobody, and I love this sound. And if reggae fans of anything else, if there are black artists that sound like this and have really good music, please tell me who they are, and I will listen to them and I will promote them immediately. I have not heard them. I hear all the relaxed reggae, and I don't like it because I am a person built on energy, and
completely.
It doesn't. It just tunes me out of everything, which I guess is part of the point, but my mind doesn't work like that because I'm ADHD. I can't tune out. So I'm just getting bored, and I get, I don't want to say angry at the music, but it doesn't make me feel reggae where you're supposed to blaze up and chill out. Makes me upset for some, and I don't, because my mind cannot shut off. It does not do the things it needs to do to get into this music. It is a me problem. The music is just fun.
I mean, I love, stuff like, dub music, which I think the Police do owe a debt, although they did take, the sound of dub, which is this big, heavy, bass sound system sort of thing, and did different, nobody sounds like, as you said, nobody sounds like the Police did on these last two records, because they were basically, they had started off as a white reggae band, and then basically they took that sort of trio reggae sound into territories so removed from dub reggae or Jamaican the sort of
you wouldn't call the last two albums a reggae album. No. I mean, you might call Ghost in the Machine because they were still a little bit, but the last one is not punk, it's not reggae, it is all new wave, and they were one of the I mean, I don't think they want to consider themselves the founding fathers of new wave, but there they are. I mean, they took all of these influences and put it through the filter of like the new synthesized 80s, and there we are.
And I would say that honestly, the nearest counterparts you have in terms of American bands doing what the Police didn't take in terms of taking, the post-punk sound and basically spitting out the new wave sound, and obviously doing that through an increasingly global lens is the Talking Heads. There is there's a degree, particularly when Remain in Light, which comes out at about the same time as Ghost in the Machine, it is essentially about 20% an Afrobeat album. They're welding on new sounds to the post-punk sort of thing, and the Police are sort of almost doing this in reverse. Is winnowing down and refining down. This perhaps this global sound to something that could only ever be the Police.
So Synchronicity, great album.
Great album, really liked it.
It deserves its space. I like Ghost of the Machine better, but I heard it first in a story I'm shy about sharing because it involves personal stuff. But I first heard it at my getting my senior pictures. This is the first, and the photographer was like, "Okay, what music do you want to listen to while we're taking the pictures?" And it's just like, "Oh, the Police. I've heard this band a few times, but I've never heard an album." And it's like, "Well, let's do it." And he put Ghost in the Machine on, and then in the middle of the conversation, there's this conversation. It must be weird with your family right now. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And then he went, he looked at me and he had this shock that he knew something that was wrong, and went, "Oh," and then. My mind never stops working, so it worked it out, and it's like, the reason why my dad isn't here is he's been having an affair, and he's not been super busy with work, and everybody knows about it but me. And
thanks, the Police.
Dear God, my family. Okay, let's listen to the Police and take some pictures. Okay,
that sounds good. Oh man. This has basically been my introduction to the Police. So at least, Joe, you could introduce me to the Police in slightly less.
If you really like this one, if you want their white reggae stuff, get white reggae. They're breakouts. They moved on from Roxanne, and it's like the sequel to a video game where the first one,
good.
It's pretty good, but there are errors because it's the first time they're doing this. The second time is they are refining everything, and it is fantastic. And then Ghost in the Machine is obviously when they move into like the synths and the new waves, and it is an incredibly good album. Like I said, it gets better after the singles because it is all a cohesive thing that is messaged and all falls into the concept. So definitely listen to those two. Their third album, you just have a listen, see what you like.
And the first one as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been fun.
It's fun. I'm glad to introduce, even though it's something like the Police, who are the biggest band in the world. It's fun doing this with Oasis. It was fun doing it for the Police.
This is about half the length.
My taste is kind of the Japanese, the British, and the Foo Fighters. So I kind of have more on this. It's weird that I kind of have more on it, but like I said, my tastes fall into the British, the Japanese, and the Foo Fighters. So. It falls into that.
Okay, so we are going to be doing an anime anniversary episode next on our hit list, and then I think it is back to you in late August for Devo, I believe, Joe.
Yes. That's the one I thought was in August. So. Yes, Devo's breakout album. What is it? Are we not men?
Question: Are we not men?
Q: Are we not men?
Answer: We are Devo.
A: We are Devo.
which will be celebrating its 45th
that album
its
title.
45th anniversary. But next time,
Yes.
in mid-July, we will be talking about the 35th anniversary of the anime that started it all, Akira.
Okay.
This is going to be a big one.
Yeah. This is going to be,
This is like the start of anime.
We've been doing a lot of, like,
big things.
landmarks. We did,
Yeah.
We did Dark Side of the Moon this year, and now we're doing Akira.
Yeah, and Synchronicity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, Synchronicity,
Yeah.
which has fallen off a little bit, but it sold 8 million copies in America. It's still a big something.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. So we will see you. Let's do the usual social media things. We can be found on Twitter, on Not So Final Prod, if Twitter is still standing by the time that this episode goes out, which these days is a little bit up in the air. If not, we'll probably put a link on where we can be found social media wise. Otherwise, we can be found on Patreon. If you'd like to point us in the direction of something that is enjoying an anniversary shortly this year, ideally sort of the big anniversaries, 17th 18th anniversary is great, not really what we're looking for. We're looking for nice round 5 divisible by 5 numbers ideally. You can do that on patreon.com/the Thom and Joe show, Tom spelled with a H. We will see you next time on the Thom and Joe show. I've been Tom.
Yes, I've been Joe, and numbers 1, 2, 3. Okay, sorry. I had to.
He had to,
mate.
He had to. We'll see you next.
Bye.
Bye.
Make me stop.
Bye.